Monday to you. Welcome back out to the front porch. Time for another episode of Monday Meditations. It is a little cool out here on the front porch today, but it is that time of year where we should be getting a little bit colder. I wonder if you have your Christmas list ready. And many people this time of year are putting together a list of things that they would like to have as a gift. And we're trying to find those gifts, scrambling around to find those gifts for those that are special to us. And that kind of brings me to the thought for today's section of the Sermon on the Mount and this great study that we're doing, looking at the words of Jesus, getting to the heart of the matter. And that's exactly what Jesus was doing. He's talking about the character of those who would be like him, those who would be like God. And going back to the original creation, we were made in the image of God. We have been put here on this earth with a purpose to glorify God in everything that we do, to fear him and keep his commandments, which is the whole of man. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses the heart of the matter over and over again with the attitudes that we are to have, to the going beyond what many of the religious world had done with his word at that point in time, and how trying to check boxes and getting the idea of I'm just going to work my way to heaven. If I don't do this or if I do that, then I get to go to heaven. And missing the whole point of the matter. Jesus says, get the heart right. Out of it are the issues of life. And so as we go back to this sermon, we're in chapter 7 now. We're going to be looking at verses 7 through 12. And you'll see maybe the connection that was making with that Christmas list earlier. He starts out with verse 7 saying, ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. One author in his commentary was talking about these words, ask, seek, knock. And if you'll look at the first letter of each one of those words, there's the heart of the matter. Ask. God's expecting us to ask. Men ought always to pray and not to faint, Jesus would say. Luke chapter 18 teaches us that, verse 1. We ought always to pray. We're to pray without ceasing, 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 17. Praying without ceasing and not fainting, as Jesus was talking about, just simply means continually have that idea of prayer, that mindset of prayer, that opportunity before us to pray to him. Don't leave him out of our plans. James chapter 4 teaches us that. You go around saying today, tomorrow, I'll go into such and such a city, continue there a year, buy and sell and get gain. He says, you don't know what tomorrow holds. We ought to say, if the Lord wills, we'll do this or so. You look at that context, as I paraphrase James 4, the latter part of the chapter, he goes on and says, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. And that context, of course, is leaving God out of your plans. We need to be asking God for those things that we need in our lives, that we want in our lives. You look back to other passages that James would talk about on prayer, and he says, you don't receive because you don't ask. And sometimes you don't receive because you ask amiss. And Jesus was, in essence, going back to this concept of have your heart in tune with God and know that he's in tune with you. And you have these needs in your life, ask. Seek, knock. Ask for what you need. Even though he knows what we need before we ask, he's already said that in chapter 6. Absolutely. Ask. But then seek. Look after, long for, search after, and knock. And it'll be open to you. This is a persistence that we're talking about in this as well. And so it's characterized with that acronym, again, ask, a good way to remember the passage. It'll be open to you. Then he talks about a little bit more in verse 8 how this works. He says, for everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Now, be careful with our understanding of what he's saying here. Yes, God is going to take care of our needs, but it's not a Christmas wish list here, as we sometimes think that if you put that on the list, you're going to get it. That's not how God works. No, sometimes he says no, sometimes he says wait, and sometimes he answers immediately. There's far more of a promise to prayer than we sometimes give credit to, yes, but there's also sometimes we give too much credit to God's just going to do whatever I ask. That's not the case. In a sense, though, if you'll look at this passage objectively, there is a negative sense to this as well. What you ask for, what you seek, and what you knock and search for, you will find, whether it's good or bad. You're going to be going after those things that are special to you. And so, again, you go back to the context and look at what Jesus has said over and over again. Get to the heart of the matter. Be focused on Him. So when I'm focused on Him, what I'm asking for would be things that are in accordance with His will. What I'm seeking for are things that bring glory and honor to Him. When I knock, I'm trying to get into those things that are pleasing and acceptable in God's eyes. Thinking about that, prayer should be disciplined according to God's Word. As a matter of fact, Jesus gave the greatest example of that when He was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. Of all the things to be asking for, He's asking for another way to save mankind than for Him to have to go to a cross. That was heavy. That was a burden upon Him. He literally was prostrate in the garden. He fell upon His face and He prayed, and He said, "Let this cup pass from me." But that wasn't all of His prayer, was it? You probably remember very well, and maybe have jumped ahead of me on this as you think about Matthew 26:39, when He said, "Not His will, but the Father's will to be done. Not my will, but thine be done in everything." If Jesus was willing to pray that, what am I willing to pray for? What am I asking for? What am I seeking? What am I knocking for in my life? All the rash things that we could pray for, you see examples of it in the Scriptures. We need to be praying for things that bring us closer to God and closer to the brethren, closer to that relationship where we will be with Him for all eternity. In thinking about that, God answers, sometimes it's been said this way, God answers sharp and sudden on some prayers and thrusts these things, the thing that we have prayed for, right in our face. That's true. This one author wrote this, is Ralph Waldo Emerson put it this way. He said, "What we seek, we shall find. What we flee from, flees from us." As Goethe said, what we wish for in our youth comes in heaps on us in our old age. Too often cursed with the granting of our prayer, and hence the high caution that since we are sure of having what we wish, we beware to ask only for high things. Only ask for things that bring us closer to God. Let's live our lives focused on Him, getting back to the heart of the matter. And then he illustrates it this way with the best of mankind. What would the best of mankind look like in this asking, seeking, and knocking? He says, verse 9, "Or what man is there of you who, if his son asks him for a loaf, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a serpent?" The argument here, he's again making a comparison to the highest level of a good relationship here, that father to his child, and how when a child comes to his father, he asks for a loaf of bread. He wouldn't give him a stone. Many of the loaves of their day and age could look a little bit like a stone, and it'd be a harsh trick to play upon a child, wouldn't it? Or if he asked for a fish, he would give him a serpent. In that high level of relationship between a father and a son who wants what's best, he said God sees in that way as well. Remember Genesis 1:26-27, the concept of being created in the image of God. We are made in His image, but if a father would do this for a son, he would give him bread, not a stone. He would give him a fish, not a serpent. He says, how much more, even beyond that showing of goodness, would the Father in heaven give to us if we ask Him? On a higher level, He goes beyond that. We see the greatness of God in this. Sometimes a father is not going to be what he should be here in this world, but God's always going to do what is right. God's always going to be what He should be, what we need Him to be. He's always going to do what is true. He's always going to do what is just. And thinking about that, it goes back to the idea with this bread and stone and fish and serpent. One has said, like some of the older poetry of the Hebrew, and which is not so much rhyming of syllables as it is rhyming of the illustration, rhyming of the thought itself, more so than the syllables themselves. And so this was painting a picture in their minds. Even your fathers would do this. God's going to do even far beyond that. Then verse 11, "If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father who is in heaven give good things to them that ask Him?" The contrast here, you know how to give good gifts, and you do bad things. Mankind has done evil and wicked things throughout history, and will continue to do them. And that's part of that choice that we have in free moral agency in this world. But if we can still give good gifts being evil, how much more so, he goes beyond that, can God give? God who created all things, who is all just, all good, all loving, all of those things that these characteristics that the Bible teaches us about God. And we know He cares for us and wants us to ask and put those cares upon Him. God is like man in that sense that He can do good things, but He's not like man in the sense that He will never do evil. He'll never mess up. He'll never make a wrong decision. And then finally, He closes out this section with verse 12. All things, therefore, whatsoever ye would that men should do unto you, even so do ye also unto them, for this is the law and the prophets. We've heard this passage used and related to in the sense of the golden rule of the Bible, the golden text of the Bible, John 3:16, but the golden rule of the Bible: treat people the way you want to be treated. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is how it's been worded. I can even remember back in public school having that on a poster on the wall in this classroom: do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. This, I've heard it said before, and I really believe this to be the case. This is one passage right here that helps to prove to me that this book that we studied, the Bible, is not from men, it's from God. Because it's hard for man to think this way. Some have put it this way: do unto the other fellow the way he'd like to do unto you, and do it first. That's a good concept of it. Another says, do unto others as they would do unto you if they had the chance. I like that as well. Still in this verse, he says it haunts the human race, and now then, and then some wise man has caught a glimpse of this true importance, and we've seen it happen before. And what does that do when we see someone else doing something maybe they didn't want to do, but they did it because they knew this would be good for that other person? Do unto others the way you would have them do unto you. We sometimes get more into the do unto others the way they've done unto you. That's a retaliation concept. Or do unto others before they do unto you. If you're doing good, that's one thing, that's okay, but that's not what we mean by that most often. It's get yours no matter who you have to step on to get there. That's not Christianity. Jesus took the loss. He left heaven. He left the place that I long to go to, and I'm sure many of you do as well, to be there with Him. He left that place to come to this earth and to die that wretched death that He died. And He did so for you and for me. One author says this: the era of Christianity, peace, brotherhood, the golden rule as applied to governmental matters is yet to come, and when it comes, then and only then will the future of nations be sure. See, this has an impact on us immediately, personally, but it also has an impact on the society around us. It kind of reminds me of what Solomon said in the proverb: righteousness exalts a nation, and sin is a reproach to any people. So let's ask, let's seek, let's knock, but only for those things that bring glory and honor to God. That's something on which we can meditate this Monday and every day. May God bless you till we meet again.